Hi, and thank you for watching. In this video, we're going to look at 3 different types of explosive power in Chen style Tai Chi. I posted a short where I was showing 3 different ways of doing Fajin, and someone asked, well, can you give me some instruction on how you do these? And of course, in a short video, 10-minute video or something, I can only give you a few pointers and a few tips so that it expands your understanding of this. But hopefully that, along with practice and a good teacher, this will help you in terms of refining this important aspect of Chen style Tai Chi. So Fajin is explosive power. It's one of the fun aspects of Chen style Tai Chi. You see it in old frame and especially in new frame routines. And one thing I came to realize is that people do the Fajin in slightly different ways. I categorized it into 3, and those 3, in terms of how I see them, is an integrated approach, so everything happens with the full body supported. There is a rotational Fajin, and then there's a shaking Fajin. So let's look at all 3 of these. First one, most important one, is the integrated approach. And I should say that in looking at these 3, it isn't, in my opinion, a requirement to practice and train all of these. It's a matter of understanding that there are different ways of doing Fajin, understanding the approaches that work best for you and your body and your training. And so that's the important thing. Understanding that there are different ways that people initiate and express the Fajin is the important thing. The most fundamental and the primary one is this integrated approach, right? The integrated power. We can see this, a good example of this would be the double fist strike that happens at the end of the routine, both new frame and old frame. Right? We do the kick, and then from the kick, there is a double fist strike. This motion is one that comes through, and I call it integrated Fajin, because the body and the limbs, the striking of the fists, all line up and are integrated as a single unit. Of course, you know with Tai Chi, it isn't something where the hands are just relying on their own muscle power, that everything has to be supported by the structure and shape and the internal power of the body. And this is expressed in this Fajin very clearly, right? So from here, coming through. In the new frame, there's also the spearing palm that happens in 3 through the back. So we come through here, and then from there, spearing palm. These can also be examples of this integrated power. The integrated power, of course, relies on this body motion, right? So this is the reason for the training of the first routine in the old frame, and why they say this is the building of our internal power. It builds the internal power. It trains us to be able to use the body as a single unit, that we find the movement starting internally, that gets expressed externally, either in a soft motion, right, through here, again, supported by the movement of the body in the lower abdomen, the dantian, and with fast motions as well. Slow or fast, soft or hard, it is the same body mechanics that is required. So the short and simple answer to refine your integrated Fajin, just practice the first routine. Though there are a few other tips and advice that probably will help, right? First one is that when we're generating this power, when we're generating the fast power of a Fajin, we're generating it from the body and traveling and sending it up through the body, into the arms, and out to the fists. First thing to avoid doing, to be aware of, is to not send the force into the shoulders. Right? It's very easy for the force to go into the shoulders rather than through the shoulders. Going into the shoulders, here. Going into the shoulders, here. Going through the shoulders, shoulders stay down. Shoulders stay connected to the body. Force can move through, nothing is wasted. You can still, with the force going into the shoulders, have something that moves quickly, but it has no support from the body behind it. The point of integrated power is that the body moves, that force gets transferred to the next segment, say the shoulders, moves through the shoulder, gets transferred to the next segment, which is the upper arm to the lower arm to the fist. The support happens continuously without a break. You move the force into the shoulder, suddenly a whole bunch of the force gets dissipated by the shoulder, the arm extends out, but it doesn't have that support behind it. Right? So the integrated power means to connect the striking surface, the fist, the forearm, the elbow, to the force and support generated by the body. Right. Everything moves as a unit and closes as a unit. Timing can be one-to-one, or it can be slightly offset. Offset means that the body moves and completes the move, and the hands and the strike happen a split second afterwards, so that the force happens from 1 through 1, 2, 3 to expression. So it doesn't mean that it has to happen as a single unit, so that's a possibility. It means that everything is connected and supported as the force travels from segment to segment to segment. So tip number 1, advice number 1 is make sure it doesn't go into the shoulders. Generate the force through the body, have it travel through the shoulders. The other important piece is to understand that the generation of the power happens with everything in motion. The expression of it, the Fajin, the snap happens at the sudden stop that happens, right? The generation of the power is the moment before that. The expression of it happens when the movement stops, when the momentum of the arm stops, right? So that it's something where you're connecting with someone, your opponent, you're driving them back, you suddenly stop, and they keep going, right? To do that sudden stop, the main thing is to avoid using muscular tension to stop the motion, right? If you're using muscular tension to stop that, it ends up being here, right? It's a difference from that muscular braking power, the braking in terms of applying the brakes, slowing everything down to come to that stop, to something where you allow the force to travel all the way through. So don't use a muscular tension. Instead, you must allow a relaxation through the body, through the arm, to allow the force to travel to the extremity, to the end of the striking surface. What stops the motion, what provides that snap, is the fascia and the ligaments and the posture that provides the end position for whatever the Fajin is. So allow for the solid structure, the generation and transfer of the internal power, and then the relaxation that allows for that sudden stop. So those are the main requirements for this form of Fajin, which I think is the most important, the most fundamental, and really to practice Fajin is almost all that you need. But I will mention 2 other ways that people do the Fajin in terms of the emphasis. First one is rotational Fajin. Best example of this, of course, is the punch. And as we know, the punch has this rotational aspect to it, where the striking arm is rotating as we strike. This is an important quality, and so the rotational Fajin just emphasizes this method of providing the explosive power. So in this case, everything that we talked about before, don't have the force go into the shoulder. Don't have the musculature provide the braking power. Keep everything relaxed and allow the force to go through all the way to the limit of the ligaments and tendons and fascia. Keep the structure of the body solid and generate the motion through the movement of the body, turning into the hip and the movement of the dantian. Right. The only other aspect then becomes adding this rotational force and this spiraling motion to send the force, and it is in terms of the feeling from the person practicing, it allows the sense of the force to continue, so that it has, you know that you're doing it right when it feels like the force generated spirals beyond where the strike is. Right? Important for this is the support provided by the spiraling of the other arm. It also is what ends up being, through the structure of the hips and the dantian, a spiraling that happens through the thighs, and of course this rotational aspect of the dantian. And when these line up and provide that additional dimension to the direction of the force, that's when we get the rotational Fajin. Another place where this can be expressed, of course, is in the new frame. These striking, say, the double palm strike here. Or 3 through the back, again, coming through with the strike here, coming down. This motion here, a rotational motion that happens through the hands, through the wrists, the forearms, also through the body. Right. But the primary one, the one that we can practice both in old frame and in new frame, of course, is cover hand and punch. So this rotational motion means that we maintain all of the requirements of the integrated power, but we put extra attention and emphasis into this rotational motion that happens through the hips and the dantian, transferring that through to the motion that happens through the elbows, forearms, wrists, and fists. Right. Rotational power. The last is shaking power. Shaking power is one where we end up where instead of applying a single force and then a simple stop, it is one where, it's a shake that happens at the end, right? So an example of that comes through, again, in new frame, coming through here. You can do it also with the double fist punch as well, here. Right. This builds on emphasizes the elastic quality of conditioning the ligaments, tendons, and fascia, right? And so the point of doing this is so that it becomes much harder for the person to respond to. A single strike and a single Fajin, sometimes a person can anticipate and recover from. This is especially with Fajin, where instead of launching the person, you're staying in contact with them, right? They're there and you just need to disrupt their equilibrium. They have got they're connected to you, they're hanging on to you, they're trying to control you. And then you do a motion that has multiple forces coming through in a repeated fashion, and that can uproot a person, break their hold, and then give you a moment for gaining the advantage. How to train this, though? Everything from the integrated power, don't go through the shoulders, apply the force all the way to the end, move through the body, these all still apply. right? With the training, all the starting point anyway is that when we come through, we find that end point, it drops back. We find that spring and we emphasize the spring. First is just to emphasize the spring once, a single spring, right? From the side. This isn't really any different than the integrated power. It's just accentuating that delay in the application of the force, right? Having it move through as a wave. And then from there we add in a recoil. This is sort of like if you're learning to do a snare drum and a drum roll. First you just drop it down and let it bounce up. Boom, boom. And then you let it drop and it bounces twice. Boom, boom. And then you lift it up. Boom, boom. This is the same concept anyway, where we're here. Do it once. Do it twice. Which means that the force comes through. It travels back to the body. The body then recoils and comes back out. So it's something where the recoil, that sensation again happens in the torso. So it's not the arms moving back and forth. So it's not this kind of motion. It's something where from here it travels back into the core of the body and then comes back again. And if you can find that response and then play with it, then you can adjust the amount of that recoil, the amount of spring coming back and forth between the hands from one to more. Right? So, has that quality. Again, this is only providing you with a basic concept. To actually be able to execute this requires first understanding the fundamental principles of the integrated Fajin, and then from there trying to find and accentuate either this rotational or this shaking technique. And again, my personal opinion is the integrated is the fundamental one. Even in some ways you could say that all of these are all just Fajin. They're just emphasizing different qualities that should be in each and every Fajin. So that's the other way of thinking of it, which I think is probably the most true. What you want to find for yourself in your own training is the techniques that respond best, that you're able to train best in your body, in your techniques, and see where they match the routine as you perform them. So I hope this information is helpful. Keep training, keep practicing, and take care.